One of the things that I think, looking back on who I was at 21 or 22 when I came in and me now at 45, is that you have just sort of this sense of confidence that whatever it is that you undertake, you'll be able to see that through and accomplish that thing. And I think that's everything from watching the leaders who went before me and following their example to sort of just overcoming so many seemingly almost insurmountable obstacles during the last 22 years and getting through those things. And when you come out on the other side, you just say, I'm far more capable maybe at 45 than I gave myself credit for when I was 19 or 20.
Our Echo series is an exploration into our people, of those who have lived a life of service, all those who know the world is a fine place and worth fighting for. Today you meet Karl Gustavson. We meet him in Normandy, France during the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Recently retired, his mission continues as he supports former teammates with their nonprofit endeavors, honors his family, and commemorates the veterans whose invasion changed the world. He reflects on a life of service, shares his personal insights about our country, and offers his gratitude for the opportunities a life in uniform has given him.
Today's June 4th, 2024, and we're here with the Untold Journey Foundation and with our first expedition with the Neptune Raiders jump team, and we're going to be going out of that C-47. And that's All Brother, which was the lead C-47 for the invasion of D-Day, which the combined troop load that jumped in that day was nearly 13,000 paratroopers. Very, very excited to be here. We're up at Cherbourg Airport, which is on the northern peninsula of Normandy. A little bit of clouds outside right now. We're hoping the winds die down and there is enough ceiling for us to get out of that plane.
That airplane led the invasion on D-Day. I said, to put this in words, 40 years of serving, America's greatest generation. Yes.
Man, I love it. This is the history of it, being out here, the smell of it. It's amazing, incredible.
That's another bucket list, once in a lifetime opportunity. So super excited.
I really can't imagine a better way to be out here than with a group of guys that I served with, that I worked with, that we put blood on the ground together, that we laid friends to rest together. And to be out here for this event now and to see those guys from 80 years ago. And, it's really emotional. And I mean, not just from a perspective of D-Day, but also from when I hear taps played, because we in the teams have laid so many friends to rest, and I've heard that song so many times, and it's usually at the closing of a ceremony where we're putting a friend or loved one in the ground, and so you hear it here, and it connects me to the guys, the 200 veterans that are sitting on that stage, and what they must, I think, probably still, even 80 years later, must still feel that when they hear taps. And in a very real sense, we owe the people who are still around and the people who have been laid to rest, we owe those people so much, an incredible debt of freedom. So it's I feel like for me, there's an amount of gratitude that goes with it, that I can be here and do these things because they came to that beach under very different circumstances and did very different things. And, that is heavy to me too, to be able to be there, and it's sort of that passing of the torch, I guess.
It's hard not to believe that greatest generation wouldn't want us to live our fullest lives and our best lives. That's what those sacrifices are
100%.
Tell us where you're from and your family and growing up.
It's pretty traditional background, I think. Came from a 2-parent household, grew up in a small town. I was born in Provo, Utah originally, and then grew up in Grand Junction. Kind of moved around a little bit while my dad finished his postgraduate stuff in neuropsychology, and then we settled in Grand Junction in 1986, which is a great town. I think that I didn't quite realize how great it was until I left. But yeah, phenomenal place to grow up, super close to the Utah desert, really close to all the, an hour or two away from the good ski resorts in Colorado. So recreation was a big part of growing up. Grew up in Boy Scouts. Dad, brother were Eagle Scouts, so there was a big push to do that whole thing. So I kind of felt like I had some life skills. Had a great childhood, no trauma to speak of. It's like 2 very nurturing parents. I joined the Navy when I was 22. It was immediately post 9/11. And to backtrack a little bit of the prehistory there. Post high school, I had done a year of college, and then I went and did a 2-year mission to Brazil. So I lived in Brazil for 2 years, worked as a missionary, proselytized, did service projects and things. Came home after the 2 years, had this life trajectory sort of all mapped out in my mind where I was going to go to school, get married, have kids. And 9/11 sort of threw a wrench in all of that. And it was I remember, as probably most of the people who were of a certain age remember exactly where they were and what they were doing on that day. And I just remember feeling like the stuff that I'm doing right now, college and the job that I had and the place I was working and sort of the aspirations that I had, all of that changed in a day, or certainly the week after that. And I kind of realigned my life trajectory, and I thought about how fortunate we are to live in America, the opportunities that we have, whether it's financial or professional or scholastic. I mean, we really have everything at our fingertips. We live in a super, the most privileged, most opportunistic time in human history, really. And for me, I just felt like I couldn't, in the wake of 9/11, I couldn't just go back to college comfortably and not do anything. So I felt like that was sort of a crossroads moment where I needed to step forward and join the military and do something. And initially, I kind of figured it would be like a 6-year, maybe 8-year, go overseas, do a couple deployments, feel like I did my part, I contributed. And 8 years turns into 10 years, turns into 16 years, and then you love the job and you're doing what you love and you're with the guys and all those kind of things. And I think probably by the time I hit 12 years, I had made the decision that I was going to do at least 20. And then that ended up being 22. And, it feels like after about those first 10 or 15 years, it just gets put on fast forward and everything goes super fast. So, and then when, I did my final reenlistment at 20 years, I reenlisted for 2 more. And I kind of felt like at that point that the things that I had come into the Navy to accomplish had been accomplished. So for me, it was sort of like, these are the things that I came in to do. We hit all of the wickets, and I'm ready to kind of transition into what's next in my life.
Can you speak to brotherhood and how that's affected you in your life?
Yeah.
What has it meant to you?
I mean, it means everything. You don't go to war for the politician or the politics or the end result. You don't even really go to war necessarily to fight against the people you're fighting for. You go to war and the main concern is like defending your teammates, defending your brothers. And brotherhood is, particularly within the teams, is this very unifying aspect of what we do. And it extends beyond the battlefield. It goes into the training that we do. It goes into people watching out for each other. I think now in sort of this end phase of my career, I see a lot of it as it pertains to people watching out for other team guys and their mental health as they move on, as they transition. Early on in my career, I would have said brotherhood is, brothers in arms. It's unifying. It's Henry VIII. It's, all of those things. You shed blood with me, you'll be my brother. And now at the end of my career, and after having just retired, I look at it and I think it's the people that you continue to reach out to, the people that continue to play an important role in your life, and the people that continue to be friends and mentors and co-collaborators, and people that that you want to continue reaching out to, that you want to continue being a part of your life. And that's what it is to me. And I think when I came into the teams, I don't know that I necessarily had that perspective, not because I didn't think that I would make lifelong friends, but just because I didn't know. I didn't know how profound the bonds would be forged between me and the guys that I worked with, or why that would be. From the time that I got to Naval Special Warfare Development Group, guys like Lou Massey and Rob Bathurst were guys who were already senior, who already had positions of leadership, who I looked up to. And early on coming to the command, there are guys you kind of have to hitch your wagon to and say, this is the type of person that I want to be at this command, and this is how to get to that point. And so you watch those people, and guys like Ed and guys like Sully, I think, are on that list too. Becomes one of those things where you watch those people and you emulate those people, and more people come along during the way, and really just incredible leaders for all the reasons that you can imagine, right? They're hands-on, they like self-sacrifice, they put their own needs behind you. They're guys who know when to say yes, when it's the right mission for the team, when it's the right tasking, and people who know when the team is tapped out, and people who know how to kind of protect the men under them, and then people who are willing to get in, get their hands dirty, do the work, participate, lead from the front. I think all of those kind of things are definitely things that I've seen. And, there's an aspect of sometimes heavy-handedness, and then other times an aspect of empathy or comforting. And you have to, as a leader, I think you have to be able to balance those two things. And you have to be able to listen and sort of crowdsource these ideas, but at the same time be able to be the guy who says, okay, at the end of the day, this is the right decision, and this is the decision that we're going to make. And so those can be hard things to balance, right? Listening to everybody, and also being the guy who makes the final decision, sometimes a tough decision. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have tremendous leaders during my time in the teams. And I actually mentioned this in my retirement speech too, is there are leaders who are some of the finest leaders that I've known, the most capable and knowledgeable SEALs that I've known. And people will never hear their names. And in my opinion, in a lot of ways, that's how it should be. And they quietly did their job as a consummate professional and set a stellar example, and then moved on to do whatever was next for them. Bittersweet. It's bittersweet, right? It's hanging it up, knowing that I had the 22-year career that post 9/11, I could not have imagined a career trajectory that would have been any better. I got to do all of the things I wanted to do. But at the end, you step away from resources and support structure, and all of a sudden I don't go to work at the command anymore. I don't walk into the locker room every day. I don't see the guys on the range. I don't go to the shoot house with the guys. Like, those are things that aren't happening anymore. There's certain amenities that we have at the command, or connections that we have at the command that aren't going to be at my beck and call anymore. And so there's a sense of like, man, it's rough to let go of that, like day in and day out, 100% support from the command and the people behind you. But at the same time, it's a new adventure for me. Like I said, when I came in, I was coming off 2 years as a missionary, which is its own sort of very unique experience, where you kind of, especially coming as a kid from high school who had been under the watchful care of my parents for the first 19 years of my life, you're sort of like in free fall for the first time, as you're out on your own. I'm living in a different country. I'm having to fend for myself. And oh, by the way, there are these sort of work obligations that I have to take care of and things that I have to do. And so I think there's some maybe nervous energy, some anticipation for the things that are coming next, but there's also a sense of excitement. And I think I would be a lot more, I guess, maybe anxious about leaving the community, nervous, if I didn't feel like some of that brotherhood or a lot of the people that I'm closest to have preceded me in retirement. And there are organizations like Community First Project, like Untold Journey Foundation, and a number of other companies, the Tomahawk Strategic Solutions, and some of these other people who are in that sphere, that are going to be opportunities for me to collaborate with those people, to train with those people, to work with those people, to come to events like this and form teams that are completely disparate from those other organizations like the Neptune Raiders, and say, hey, we're going to form a jump team that's going to go do this other thing. And I think the more guys from our era within the teams that are getting out, the more of those organizations that are sort of coming into existence, and people realize, like, we want to continue touching base with the guys that we worked with for so long, because those relationships are sustaining. You know, I remember talking to my grandfather years and years ago. My grandfather passed when I was at Bud's, actually, in 2003, and he served in World War II. He was an aviator on B-29 bombers. And he didn't talk much about the war, and he didn't talk much about the Depression. He was an immigrant from Finland, and he grew up in a house that English was the second language. He grew up in Salt Lake. But when I talked to him about the Depression, I asked him about it one time, because in my mind, the Depression must have been this miserable era when everybody hated life. And what he remembered was playing stickball in the streets, and he remembered families that didn't have anything, but they were happy. He remembered fathers going out and finding 2 and 3 jobs and coming home exhausted, but still being good fathers to their children. And, you know, the overarching theme was that his remembrances of how the Great Depression weren't completely negative. And yeah, it was a hard time for America, but what he remembered about it were the positive experiences and the way that communities bonded together, and the way that kids who didn't have anything could go play a street game and have an enjoyable time with it, you know, and that stuck with me. Unfortunately, the hardest moments, I think, tend to be the moments that unite us. That was one of the things that I remember in the wake of 9/11, is I remember just this general sense of, and this is then obviously the days before social media and everything, before you could get on Instagram and post thoughts and prayers or whatever people post now. I was living in Northern California at the time at my aunt and uncle's house, and I remember the people in San Jose, California, gathering in the streets and holding signs that said, you know, we believe in America, and, you know, we'll recover, we'll be strong, and standing there waving American flags, and this sense of that the community, everybody, people you didn't know, they would stop and they would talk to you, and you felt that sort of like nationwide. And, you know, I dropped what I was doing in California and moved back to Colorado, and it was the same thing in Colorado, and it was this very unifying, horrible, horrible day in America's history. But you felt like this unification of people, and it didn't matter what political side of the aisle you were on, and it didn't matter what religion you were, and it all of that stuff got put aside, and people were like, hey, we have to get together and recover from this. And in the teams, I think it's the same. You know, I mean, one of the biggest examples that I remember, when the extortion helicopter went down in 2011, August 6th. We lost a full third of one of the Trident squadrons. So there's 4 assault squadrons. We lost, and each assault squadron has 3 troops. One whole troop from one of the assault squadrons was gone overnight. And, you know, that is a massive, for the small numbers of special operators that we have at the command, that's a massive segment of our, you know, essentially 1/12 of all of the SEALs operators at the command are gone overnight. But in the aftermath of that, I remember, you know, guys who were from different squadrons, Silver Squadron, Gold Squadron, Blue Squadron, everybody sort of united in this effort to take care of the families. And you just saw, again, that we're bonded as a team anyway, but tragedy brings us closer, and those shared experiences certainly, I think, strengthen that bond even more. Within the teams, we're very fortunate that guys are willing to be selfless. If there's work that needs to be done, you don't have to ask twice. People volunteer for it. And that's always been something that stuck with me, is that if something needs to get done, let's go do it. And guys tend to carry that attitude with them. And it doesn't feel like sacrifice. It just feels like what we do. When I was born, it was just my older brother and me. And my father was finishing school, and so, my mom, she was essentially working 2 jobs and also taking care of 2 young kids and helping pay for my dad to go to school. I was too young to remember that, but then, we moved and more kids came along, and I always remember that, like, my mother sort of deprioritized her own interests in the interest of helping my father professionally to establish his career and do the things that he wanted to do, provide for the family, take care of the kids. To the extent that we joke that my mom, when we were kids, hadn't had a hot meal in 5 years. She just was constantly going to the kitchen back and forth, taking care of everybody else first. And so I think that exemplified sacrifice early on in my life. And then the things that I think that I've seen along the way that are most impactful in people's lives, my own life included, is when you set aside your own personal interests to put the interests of the team or the cause in front of you. Every time you go through that door, every time you're the first guy into the building, there's some degree of sacrifice in that. So certainly those things. And then I think you see with the wives and families that stay behind and what they sacrifice to send the husbands forward. And I know, having just done my own retirement back at the command and looking out at the crowd of people that were there, each one of those people, I could identify something that they had sacrificed to help me be successful in my career. And they had put me, and that's friends and that's family, and certainly my parents, sleepless nights, and my fiance. And so I think there's a lot of sacrifice involved, and particularly, and I even mentioned this when I was giving my retirement speech, is that for me, the retirement itself was more a way to bring all of those people together in one audience, so I could sort of say this collective thank you to all of them for everything that they had done for me. And a lot of times they didn't know where I was or what I was doing, or they just knew that, I needed them to take care of this thing or that thing, and I would reach out to them and they would say, yep, we'll do it, no problem. And, again, tremendous sense of gratitude for that. But there's always so many other examples that I could go into of guys putting themselves, putting their friends, putting their own personal interests aside to help out the team or to help out their teammates. And like, from the early days of Buds, the lessons that are instilled in us is when the mission's over, you take care of the team gear, then you take care of your own gear, and then you take care of yourself. And so it's like self comes last, sometimes to our own detriment, right? But it is very reinforced in the community that the team and the mission come first.
Let's talk about love of country.
Yeah.
What your country means to you.
When I think back, in the time that my grandfather was alive, I remember talking to him about his family immigrating from Finland and coming to the United States and moving to Salt Lake, and he didn't speak English, and it was sort of like this difficult time. And I remember him saying that when he was in the war, like, he felt this sense of he was very privileged to have been the first generation of his family in the United States. On my mom's side of the family, there were multiple generations. She was born in Indiana to a farming community, and both of her parents had been multiple generations out there. But the same kind of sentiment. They felt like living in America was the best chance for success, the best chance to raise a family, the best environment that you could possibly be a part of. And so I grew up with those people as examples, my grandparents, and then passing that down to my parents. And so I just have this very profound sense of gratitude, sense of love, sense of appreciation for the things that I had. And I think that was only amplified by living abroad for 2 years. And then I think the other thing is, when you study the history of our country and the unique foundation of our country and how we are as a country as far as like bringing on board all of these different people from different cultures, from different countries. And, we have to appreciate that. There's a reason that people have aggregated here, because this is the epicenter of democracy in the world. And when you learn that, and when you learn the foundations of that, and you learn to appreciate that, I think it's impossible not to feel a sense of like, we need to defend that. We're a nation that espouses the values of, liberty, fraternity, and equality. That's who we are. So sort of like the founding fathers in writing the Constitution and the way that they ran the Continental Congress and the sort of test runs that they did in the lead up to writing the Constitution, and even sort of breaking away from Great Britain for all the reasons that we did, that there is a certain degree of divine inspiration in that, the hand of God guiding sort of our founding fathers to be able to create this enduring document in the Constitution. And certainly I think, if we wrote a Constitution today, I'd be hard-pressed to believe it would last 25 years, because it would be so partisan and so divisive and everybody wouldn't be on board. And here you had this group of essentially young men, very young, some of them, who were part and parcel to forging this document that's lasted better than 200 years, as it has guided a country through all kinds of technological advancements and exponential growth and expansion and acquisition of the rest of the country beyond the 13 colonies. And for me, coming from a Christian background, it's really hard for me not to see the hand of divinity in that as sort of a guiding force. And so it's always sort of been my own personal belief that as long as we are a nation that espouses those values of goodness and righteousness and service and, the golden rule, for lack of a better word, doing unto your brothers as you would have them do unto you, and just being good human beings, if we lose sight of that, then we lose our country. I think it was Ben Franklin who said our system of government is a republic as long as we can keep it. It's a difficult system to hold on to, and you have to remember that a republic only exists in the form of a republic as long as the people that it governs are righteous. Lasting happiness comes from service and gratitude. And I think it's not just gratitude because we have all this stuff. Gratitude because we live a truly blessed life in an incredibly free country, the freest, most opportunistic, most diverse, most blessed country, and not just in recent history, but in the history of the world, in the history of humanity. It's a truly, truly unique time and place that we live, and I think too often we overlook those things. So I think my message would be, number one, be grateful for the things that we have. Take time each day to study, to learn about our country, to go out, experience the country, to be out in the cities and communities that you live in, to serve the people who are around you. It doesn't have to be military service. It doesn't have to be public service. But I do find people who lay a lot on the line, police officers, firefighters, public servants, military, tend to have, even though we've sacrificed a lot, and some of those guys have been badly hurt, but come home and still have a tremendous sense of gratitude for the fact that they were able to serve. And that confuses people because you don't understand it, because you didn't do it. But I feel like even with all of the loss and all of the hardship that I've been through over 22 years, what I come away with is just this sense of gratitude that I'm incredibly blessed to live here. I'm incredibly blessed to be able to serve and to have served and to be able to have worked with the people that I worked with. So I think that's it. Seek opportunities to serve. Seek opportunities to make yourself better. Stop looking inward and start looking outward. Be grateful for the things that you have.
Great jump. The exit is exhilarating, it's intense. I feel like it's different than exiting out of a free fall aircraft. But yeah, great exit. Couldn't ask for a better day, better weather. Easy all the way down. It's a good jump. Been carrying this with me on every jump. This is my grandfather, Arlie Gustavson, navigator on B-29 bombers. And these are unit patches, rank patch. Man, it's just incredible to be able to come here and commemorate, the men who jumped here, but also, my grandparents who both served, both grandfathers, one in the Navy and one in the Army Air Corps. We're here today dressed as Army Airborne to honor the men who jumped here 80 years ago, but also we never fail to represent.
What we'll do, we'll go down the line here and present the wings. I will salute you. And I'm going to pin these on you. Put up what I I do like to do is make sure I get in there. And again,
Thank you, sir.
You got some pecs under there?
I think you can find the bone probably. Get deep enough.
Very good. And big man here, who we got?
Rob.
Rob?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Sully.
Sully.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
I'll get to it.
Fred Williams, sir. Thank you, sir.
What an honor to be a part of
Gus.
Gus.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Likewise.
There it is. Thank you.
This is a pleasure, you know
Give a
that.
little tap up and all that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The service in the military prepares you in unique ways for any job, any venture, anything that you might do. And whether you do, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 22 years, it gives you a unique skill set in an environment that's so dynamic and so complex, it's difficult to replicate in any other industry. Whether you do ROTC and use it to leverage that to pay for college, whether you use it to travel, see the world, learn new things, all these different kind of things, I think there's a lot of avenues that you can take. And you may end up like me, where I thought 6 years, a couple deployments, do my time, feel like I served, and 22 years later, I'm sitting here saying, wow, that went really fast, and I learned more than I could possibly encapsulate in one conversation.